First Alert Meteorologist Chris Mastrobuono with this latest edition of Weather 101. And with it being mid-August, I thought it would be a good time to talk about the peak of Atlantic hurricane season. Yes, we have Erin currently churning in the Atlantic basin. Where will Erin go? That is going to be the big question as we push into this week. But here you can look at this graph here compiled by the National Hurricane Center and NOAA. You can see the red here indicates all the hurricanes and tropical storms that have formed since the 40s, and then you see the yellow there. Those are all hurricanes, and you can see they peak in September. We entered that peak of hurricane season generally at about mid-August, and it runs through about mid-October. That is when we see an exorbitant amount of tropical cyclone activity in the Atlantic basin. So as we push along here in the season, it's been a rather slow start to the Atlantic hurricane season. We're up to letter E. We have Erin now, but it has been a rather slow start to the season. As we put this in motion here, we'll take a look at the tropical cyclone frequency over the last, since the 1940s. And you can see primary development area is just to the east of the Leeward Islands, where you see those red colors. That is 70 plus tropical storms and hurricanes have formed in that area, and those generally track either towards the west into the Caribbean, or they generally curve out to sea, and that's all determined. The determining factors of that would be where all the other players are at on the field, how strong high pressure systems are across the Atlantic. Are there any fronts or troughs coming through the eastern part of the country that kind of help kick those systems out to sea? So as we put this in motion here into September, as we get into the peak of hurricane season, you can see that area really begins to expand, and that red area of 70 plus storms over that time span expands from just to the east of Leeward Islands all the way up through just west of Bermuda and then into the central Atlantic. And you can see kind of the curvature of kind of historically and climatologically how those storms kind of generally curve out to sea. There's been some exceptions over the years, as we all know, with systems like Hurricane Sandy that have basically, formed into the southern Caribbean and rode the Gulf Stream all the way up through the Atlantic and then curved inward, curved towards the west. So storms that actually do that in recent history. As we put this in motion, as we go into October, that's kind of when we generally see the season begin to wind down. But as we mentioned, even with Sandy, you can see some pretty potent storms in the month of October. You can see generally about 30 to 50 storms formed just to the south of Cuba, up through Florida Panhandle, and then out to sea. Typically you see a lot of homegrown systems, those systems that form closer to the coasts, whether they be in the Gulf or just off the Atlantic coast or in the Caribbean Sea. And then as we go into November, pretty much shuts off. You see lower activity, only about 10 to 30 storms have formed, and again, that's generally closer to land there along the Bahamas and the Caribbean. So as we push along here in hurricane season and we make our way throughout the peak, if you live along the coast, you want to keep a close eye to the forecast, make sure all necessary preparations are in place. If your property is indeed threatened by a tropical storm or hurricane as we march along here in hurricane season 2025.